Welcome to the Grow Your Money podcast, where we're on a mission to change how we talk about money. Our fireside chats are the heart of our show, bringing the energy and excitement of in-person events straight to your ears. We aim to connect you with inspiring voices and stories that matter, sharing relatable experiences and insights that will transform your financial life. But this isn't your typical money show. We look at the emotional, psychological, and cultural factors that shape our relationship with money. So hit subscribe and join us for another episode of the Grow Your Money podcast.
BBC Sounds.
Eileen, you've got twins and a third one. You must have spent a fortune on your kids over the years.
Oh, yeah. Constant sponsored events at school. That kind of used to burst my head a lot of the time. Another thing that I found really expensive was school dinners, which you think, school dinners just now, well, in Dumfries and Galloway, they're £2 a head for school dinners. But once you go to secondary school, they don't want to have school dinners. They want to go up the town and buy their dinner. So even giving them my £3 a head, which doesn't seem an awful lot, that's 180 quid a month.
It's all the after-school activities as well. You know, it's the clubs that they want to join and the kit they need for the clubs, and then how are you going to get them to and from the clubs and the trips that the clubs want to take them on. It's never ending.
Education might be free in Scotland, but have you budgeted for the cost of uniforms, lunches and school trips?
Is moving house to get into a better catchment area a good investment?
And how do you fancy sending your children to a budgeting boot camp?
This is Cleveraboutcash, the personal finance podcast from BBC Scotland with Kim McAllister
and Eileen Adamson.
Lindsay Patterson is based in the School of Social and Political Science at Edinburgh University, and Sarah Spencer is from Child Poverty Action Group, and she works on a project looking at the cost of the school day. Sarah and Lindsay, what do you reckon? Was school the best years of your lives?
There were lots of great things for me when I was at school, but I do have to recognise that the system as it was back in the 60s and early 70s helped people like me much more than the vast majority of children. I was quite studious. I was thinking about going to university, and I ended up with a career, of course, in a university. And I think for people with that kind of inclination in the past, the Scottish system was quite good. But of course, 3/4 of my classmates left school at age 16, or they had just been forced to stay on to 16. It was just after the raising of the school leaving age. And I don't think the system served them particularly well.
Lindsay, I'm a bit like you. I'm quite studious and academic, so I went to quite a strict private school where that was what was expected. You know, you got your head down and you worked hard, and it suited me, but yeah, it definitely didn't suit a lot of my classmates. You know, it was difficult for them, but we did lots of sports, which I always thought was important. And Eileen's a PE teacher. I know you like your sports as well, don't you, Eileen?
Oh yeah, that's the only thing I would have in the curriculum. If kids can do lots of sport, then they'll be absolutely fine. No, I'm only joking. But I do think that PE and sport and activity is very important, and it does cause problems as well, because it's a really expensive thing in some ways, and it can cause barriers to people. Do you find that at all, Sarah?
Yeah, that's something that comes up quite often when we're talking with children in schools. There's lots of sort of barriers there when it comes to sort of after school clubs that are sometimes sports, sometimes other things, whether that's the costs of attending or maybe to do with sort of clothes or equipment that they might need. Or sometimes if you're relying on a school bus to take you home at the end of the day, then staying on means paying extra to get home. So some families aren't able to do that. So I suppose there are a lot of barriers there.
And what about uniform? That's the thing I seem to spend all my money on, is just replacing trousers with holes in the knees, shirts that have got pen all over them.
Anywhere that we've ever worked, that's the thing that comes up as one of the biggest issues. It's one of the biggest costs for parents. It's the sort of heart sinking when one of them comes home with a rip in their trousers, or the shoes you just bought last month have started pinching. And it's a big deal for children as well. Uniform, I think, makes everyone a wee bit more the same, a wee bit more equal, but children will tell us they still pick up on differences. It can still be embarrassing when you don't have the right stuff. Maybe if your teachers don't know that your uniform isn't right because of money problems, then you might get into trouble for it. So lots of schools are doing dead helpful things around that to try and kind of minimise some of those problems.
So what examples of that have you got, Sarah? Because, I mean, they reckon that uniform can cost about over £300 per year per child. So it's something that needs to be addressed. So have you got examples of what schools are doing well?
So I think the issue is school uniform policies, they vary so widely from school to school. So that example of £300 odd a year, it might be far more than that some places. And it depends what schools are doing about looking at the affordability of their uniform. Examples of good things that schools can do. Loads of schools do dead helpful things around not making the embroidered logos necessary, or having their uniform in colours that people can get from supermarkets and lower cost shops like that. Lots have a really good look at their uniform policies along with their pupils and their parents, so that they can change them to be right for their school community, to be affordable. There's a school clothing grant available in every local authority. It's a minimum of £100, sometimes more. Some local authorities, Murray and Edinburgh spring to mind, they have uniform banks out in the community that can be quite helpful. There's a school in Port Glasgow that they consulted with their school community. They found our community wants blazers to be part of the uniform. So the challenge then was, well, how do we make that affordable for everyone so no one's sticking out? They put in a scheme that does blazer hire for £5 for your whole 6 years at school, and then you give it back and it's recycled. So everyone can wear one, but it's not astronomical in cost. It's not putting pressure on families. It's not making children feel like they're sticking out. So loads of solutions.
Maybe add to what Sarah said there. I think sometimes very, very clearly the support that's available, that are clothing grants, but also crucially that there are elements of uniform that really, although we've known about them traditionally, don't have to be there. The research, by the way, on uniform suggests that it can have a good effect. It encourages good discipline. It removes some of the distinction associated with gross inequalities of wealth. And that's really important. And it actually then has a positive impact on children's attainment. But it does have to be managed sensibly. And I wonder sometimes, the Port Glasgow example sounds wonderful, but I wonder in fact if at some point policymakers need to say, actually, we don't have to have blazers. Blazers do cost more. What's wrong with a standardised covering, a jersey, a shirt or something of that kind, and no logos whatsoever? I mean, I think there has to be a bit of a leadership here. We don't have to have traditional kinds of uniform.
And Lindsay, I was just going to ask you, there's such competitive nature amongst parents, isn't there? And they're always wanting their children to be excellent and to achieve top grades and everything. And so many people are now looking at tutors for children in primary schools, which kind of blows my mind. But what's your opinion on that?
There's undoubtedly been a growth across the UK, actually, not just in Scotland, in the use of private tutors over the last 10 to 20 years, even in primary school. The evidence is that about a quarter of children have had some experience of paid-for tutors by the end of secondary school. Most of it is indeed in secondary school, but it does go back to primary. And there's two things I would say about that, actually. One is a positive thing. I mean, tutors undoubtedly are of great benefit. The research evidence on that is that if you have one-to-one tutoring or tutoring in a small group, it works really well, especially if the tutor is working in turn closely with the class teacher to make sure that they're not cutting across each other. But then the second main point is that because that's such a positive story, it is an enormous contribution to increasing educational inequality, because only parents who can afford to pay for a private tutor in normal circumstances can give their children access to that extra benefit of the one-to-one tutoring. So it's both a good thing in itself for families that can afford it, but it's an enormous burden, an enormous extra hurdle for children whose families simply can't afford that extra cost.
Even before COVID, there were 24% of children in the country living in poverty on a low income. And that means that there's really huge numbers of children living in homes where getting by is a big struggle, and where parents and carers are feeling the stress, on everything, not just school costs, absolutely everything, heating, food, clothing, travel. Yeah, they're amazing opportunities. Everyone should have access to them. I don't think that's the case at the moment.
As well as being a money coach and a PE teacher, and she's not got bad banter either, Eileen has another string to her bow. She teaches financial education sessions in schools. And Tynah Matembe is also passionate about teaching the next generation how to manage their money better. She founded MoneyMatix and runs boot camps on budgeting. When's the earliest you can start teaching kids about money?
I always say that the earliest you can start teaching a child about money is the moment they ask you the first question about money. And the reason for that is because when children ask you questions, it's an invitation for conversation. They're basically inviting you to give them information. And as soon as they ask you a question about money, then you should use that as a teaching moment to start that conversation.
That's a lovely way of thinking about it. And it's so right, because children are just wee sponges. They're just interested in the world around them and they want to know things and they're curious. And by shutting down conversations about anything, we're just kind of stopping that curiosity. And money is so, so important. And it is important that we have good, positive conversations with our children from a very early age. Now, how much influence do you reckon parents have on your attitude to money?
Ooh, so that is it's the most important thing that I've learned as growing up and just having my own children, is that as a parent, you're your child's first role model. So if you think about your younger self, the first person you'd have gone to ask about money would have been your mom or dad, your carer. The person that you live with is the person you trust the most. And in fact, all the research points to the fact that 91% of young people will turn to their parents in the first place for financial guidance. So if they find you as a parent ill-equipped, or if you give them a wrong attitude to money, you're the first influence, and that's the first mindset that they're going to take away. So parents are very, 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 very crucial. Everything we do, we are a mirror to our children. How we conduct ourselves in the home, what we talk about, what our values are, come through to them, and it will form the attitudes that they'll have about money going forward.
I couldn't agree with you more there, Tynah. And a lot of work that I do in my financial coaching with people is in unpicking their money stories that have come with them from childhood. And when money has been difficult in a household, or when people have had kind of poor relationships with money, the impact that then has throughout people's life is absolutely massive. So it's really good that you're bringing this to the forefront of people's minds, because hopefully the next generation of children will not have this really difficult relationship with money when they get to be adults. But the adults have to address these problems first as well, and have to be confident and be able to make good money decisions themselves.
That's right. I found that I had this dual view of money. I was coming from Uganda, which is a very cash-based economy, and I was here in the UK where credit seemed to be on top. And I just couldn't reconcile those differences. And then we started seeing that our daughter was becoming a reflection of that, because my attitude to debt was like, whoa, that's what's going on there. And she was starting to pick that up. And I had to step back and think, right, what's the right way that I need to be portraying money in this society for this child who's going to grow up and be a part of this? It's really important. And I've learned that as a parent, it's okay not to know the answers and to tell them you don't know, because then you teach them to go and find information. Let's go and learn about this together, because where I come from, things are done like this, but we're here and we need to do it like this. So let's go and learn. And it's fun and it's more relaxed when they also see you learning together.
One thing that I feel is that money can have such negative connotations, and I really feel that money needs to be a very positive thing in our lives, because money can allow us to do the things we want, but it can also stop us from doing the things we want. And I think we need to build more positive relationships with money. What are you finding that children find most difficult to grasp about money?
What I've found is teaching them how to apportion their money can be quite challenging. So the way that I try to break it down is through storytelling. You use stories and tell them, I use a story of two fictional characters called Copper and Cash, where I say, think about your money as it was put in this world to have a purpose that it has to meet. And so every pound you earn has to go on a journey. And this journey is called the 70-10-10-10 journey. So for every pound you earn, 70 pennies should go towards, your expenses, no more than 70p to your expenses. You should save at least 10p for a rainy day. You should have another 10 pennies working harder for you to bring you more money to fulfill more purposes. And you should be using 10 pennies to go and share with the world, because being selfish doesn't get you anywhere. So that way, they're looking at it from the perspective of what every pound should do. And then what values do you want them to learn? And think about what you're doing with your money and what you're teaching them based on what values you want them to pick up. If you want them to be, giving and be sustainable and learn how to ethically shop, you try and incorporate that in your lessons by thinking, right, so guys, we need to buy this toy. How can we ethically do it? How can you use the money conversation to help embed the values you want to teach them? And that's why the 70-10-10-10 was the most effective for our methodology.
Yeah, no, that is really nice. I also talk about values in my work in financial coaching as well. And I talk about positive pounds. So rather than people looking back to see where their money's gone, is sitting at the end of the month and looking through their values to see, what do you value most? Now, for me, I value time with family, I value travel, I value the outdoors. I have no interest in cars whatsoever. So for me, spending money on a car just doesn't make any sense, because I would rather spend it on these other things. So what I talk about with people is sit and look at what your values are, look at what is most important to you, and then get your positive pounds and spend those pounds on the things that are most important to you, and just ignore the other stuff, because what's important to your neighbour might not be important to you. But I find that people get kind of caught up in competitive spending.
Yes.
Do you find that as well?
Absolutely. And it's very interesting that you say that. I love houses. I'm obsessed with houses. And my mom always says to me, she says, Tynah, if you're going to love houses, for goodness sake, have them as assets. Be in the investment space where you're investing in property, right? And one of the things about that is, even as a family, we all like different stuff. We all like people like smaller houses, people like cottages, people like all different types of things. It really should not be about what the highest priced house is. It's what house speaks to you. It's your home, it's your space. So that's the same with your money. You have to use your money in a way that's going to reflect you as a person and what you represent. And it's not about what the next person has or what the next person's trying to get. It's about what you want to get, what your purpose in life is, and how your money should just be a vehicle that helps you achieve your purpose at the end of the day.
Yeah, I just love that. That's exactly the type of attitude that I've got towards money as well. And I talk about, make sure that your positive pounds are feeding your soul, and think about what's really important to you. And if spending on Spotify makes you happy, then fine. But if it's not adding any value to your life, then just quit it and do something different. You do you, and don't be worried about what anybody else is doing.
And Tynah, you do a lot of work helping migrant communities get to grips with their money as they settle in Scotland. What are the key messages you focus on there?
So in there, the biggest deal I find, even for myself as a migrant, is shifting the mindset, focusing on the fact that where you are right now is home, and trying to help myself and my community to understand that this is home right now, and we need to be positively active in leaving a good economic footprint. So because this is home, that means that your mindset has to change, and you start tuning this to be home and start acquiring assets here and start getting a good credit score and start basically participating in the healthy economic footprint of where you are at the moment. Because you find that most migrants, you have a foot in two different places, if that makes sense. You have where you're coming from and you have people there. Most migrants will either have a family they're supporting back home, or they have projects that they're already doing in a different country. and then they put what they're doing here on a back burner. And it's saying to them, well, this is home as well, so don't ignore what you're doing here. Set goals and understand that money is a vessel for achieving these goals. And so use your talents to maximize your money where you are today. Most migrants have a mindset for business. They're keen on doing business. So it's, if they have children, taking their children on that journey just to help them understand entrepreneurship. And when the parents come to see what the children have done, we open it up for conversation with them as well and try to understand what are you doing right now. And you'll find that most of the time they either have commitments back home where they originally come from, they had a house they were building maybe that needs to be completed. And so here they've put their maybe property acquisition journey on hold to try and finish what they're doing there. And so that helps me to get in there and start asking, okay, so what are your goals? What are your 1-year goals? What are your 3-year goals? And is what you're doing, is how you're spending your money now going to help you to meet those goals for tomorrow? So it's really, the key thing is getting them to start thinking goal setting. Set goals, short-term, long-term, mid-term, and see how what you're doing with your money today is feeding into those goals. And that usually helps them to shift their mindset and start, basically realign how they apportion or allocate their money and how they intend to earn money to achieve their goals.
It's so powerful, giving people the control over their money rather than feeling that the money's controlling them. It's set your goals, look at what you want to achieve, and then what do you need to do in order to do that. So that is absolutely brilliant, Tynah. Before you go, have you got any podcast recommendations for us?
Yes, I'm very, very intrigued with a new podcast that's starting to showcase Scotland's multicultural community. It's amazing because part of my work is about role modeling, helping people to role model good habits. And for you to be a role model, you need to see people around you that look like you. And so it's awesome to have a podcast that showcases multicultural communities. So that will be my recommendation. It's the Word Up podcast.
Yeah, Word Up.
I'm Etienne Kubwabo, a filmmaker and writer.
I'm Vanessa Canby, a Scottish Ghanaian podcaster, presenter, filmmaker and mum.
We're here to get the word out about Word Up, a brand new podcast bringing together a mix of guests from Scotland's diverse communities.
We'll introduce you to inspiring people from a wide range of backgrounds and cultures, showing you what we're up to, everyone that's making a difference as well. We're really going to be showing the trailblazers.
We're going to be meeting musicians, artists, activists, sports people, politicians and poets. We've got a lot of unsung heroes. People are working so hard in the community, but no one knows about them.
So join us by searching for Word Up on BBC Sounds.
You've just bought a new house, Kim, recently. So how much consideration did you give to catchment areas when you bought your house?
Oh, that was like number one thing for us, I'm afraid to admit. Well, we moved to Edinburgh from Aberdeen, so we didn't really know the city very well. And the only way to really figure out the best areas was really to go by schools and where our friends lived. And we knew which side of the city we wanted to be on in terms of where work was. And I came to Collington to visit a friend and I just fell in love with the village. It's so pretty. It's right at the base of the hills here. And then when I found out that it was a good school, I thought, yep, that's the place for me. So I would say the school had a huge influence over where we bought, definitely. What about you?
Oh, none whatsoever. No, it was close to the pub and the golf club and that was it. And now I don't drink or play golf, so...
That's hilarious.
It's true as well.
And you being a teacher, my goodness.
Oh, see, though, I'm just a believer in that the children will thrive if they're supported, and if they love learning, then they'll thrive wherever they are. So that's my kind of theory around it. I'm not that bothered about the actual school that they go to. I think that they can make the best of whatever situation they're in.
Oh, that's nice. And they've got a teacher for a mum, so if all else fails, it's on you.
Oh, they don't listen to a word I say, Kim.
Lindsay's done some research looking at the financial choices that parents make and the impact that has on their children's education. And the one thing we're always hearing about is parents who move house to get into a better school catchment area. Is that a good investment, Lindsay?
It certainly is, and there's lots of research that shows that if you can afford it and you buy a house in the catchment area of a school that has a good boost to children's learning and attainment, then your children benefit in the long term. They get better hires, they more likely to go to university, more likely to get a good job after that. So in terms of their lifetime earnings, it's a good investment by the parents. And what that shows, of course, is that the question in Scotland is often simplified into parents who pay for fees to go to independent schools and parents who don't. But of course, there are many other ways in which parents who are well off can afford to boost their children's chances. They can buy a house, but also they can provide equipment. We've seen this during the whole COVID closures thing, where having a decent laptop or tablet at home and decent broadband and Wi-Fi connections at home have been absolutely crucial in enabling children to learn anything at all, even to get access to the curriculum. And of course, there's a way in which, it's quite a hidden way, in which some children are fortunate enough that their parents earn enough that they can have good laptops, good connections and all that. And other parents simply can't afford it because the urgent thing is heating the house and getting adequate food and the basic clothing and all the other basics that have to come first before things like laptops. So in fact, the inequality isn't caused by the school. It's not caused by independent schools. It's caused by the inequality outside in society and the poverty in society. And that's the crucial thing. Can you afford to buy a good education for their children by whatever means that comes about?
You know, it's going to be a minority who are in the financial position of even being able to think about doing that. It's not quite a niche subject, but it is a consideration for only a small minority of families in Scotland. The rest are going to their local schools and getting on as best as they can with what's there for them. With COVID, the effect of the last year or so has been huge financially for families, and it's meant that families who were already on low incomes are under even more pressure now. But it's also affected a whole new range of people that might not actually know where to go for help because they haven't been in that situation before. A big thing people have realised over the last year or so is that your financial situation can just change in a heartbeat, can't it? It can put you in a difficult position. So there's a lot of families who are not entitled to this help because thresholds for all these things eligibility thresholds are quite low. So there might be lots of families who are not entitled to that help but are still struggling with school costs. And that's quite hard.
Yeah, that's a really difficult position to be in. If you just miss getting, for example, universal credit, or if you just miss getting the education maintenance allowance, which is to encourage children to stay on beyond the minimum leaving age. And the best thing, I think, is to talk to the school, talk confidentially to the school. You will find that schools are very sympathetic to that kind of position and will try to find discreet ways of helping. They won't make a big song and dance of it. And people are well aware of the difficulty. For example, on the question of free school meals, there's another good example there. The free school meals used to be a bit invidious. You had a different colour of ticket when I was at school. If you were entitled to a free school meal, that was incredibly discriminatory. And now it's done much more discreetly through electronic payment and so on. So there are ways in which schools are really good now at avoiding the stigma associated with being in financial difficulty. And I think that's the first point of support I would recommend strongly is to talk to the school.
I would always encourage parents to speak to the school because we are sympathetic to these needs and we have sometimes got funds available to help out families and help out children. So I would encourage parents to look on their local authority website and see if they're going to be eligible for that, because with COVID, people's income reducing, there will be people who've never been eligible for these before, and it's really important that they check and see if they can get that support.
Well, we're off to do our homework for next week's show. Don't forget, if you want to revise any of the subjects that we've covered, then the whole series of Cleveraboutcash is available to download on BBC Sounds.
Thank you for listening to the Grow Your Money podcast. If you're looking to take actionable steps toward achieving your financial goals, visit MoneyMatix.com. That is money, MATIX.com, and join our free Grow Your Money Challenge. Let's unite in the movement to inspire people to talk about money. Thank you for being a part of our community. We'll see you in the next episode.